Hey there. Tonight we're heading somewhere you've probably never been out, across the wide, shimmering Pacific Ocean. You know that impossible stretch of blue that covers nearly half the planet, holding more mysteries in its depths than the rest of the solar system combined. From the gentle hush of waves brushing against distant shores to the roaring chasm miles beneath, this is where the world breathes slowly, endlessly. And yes, you probably wouldn't survive more than a few seconds out here if you just decided to hop off your boat and start swimming. But don't worry, you're safe wrapped in blankets, floating only in thought. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop your location and the local time in the comments. I always love seeing how far this sleepy little journey travels. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself suspended above an endless surface of dark blue. The horizon curves ever so slightly, almost imperceptible, like the ocean is too vast to fit into the rules of geometry. The Pacific isn't just an ocean, it's the ocean. Covering more than 60 million square miles, it's so immense that if all the world's land were dropped into it, there'd still be room for another Africa. It holds more than half of all Earth's free water, quietly keeping the planet's balance, its weather, and even its heartbeat steady. From this altitude, clouds drift lazily over a canvas of cobalt and silver, while far below, ancient swells travel thousands of miles, created by storms that have long since died out. Somewhere, dolphins cut through moonlight, and on some forgotten island, palm leaves whisper in the same rhythm they did before humans had names for them. You can almost feel that rhythm, slow, patient, alive. And yet the Pacific is anything but peaceful. The word itself, Pacific, comes from peaceful sea, named by Magellan when he finally reached its calm waters in 1521 after being battered by storms in the Atlantic. It must have felt like stepping from chaos into a dream. But the irony is that beneath this tranquil surface lies an unending restlessness. Tectonic plates grind, volcanoes stir, and whirlpools of wind and current plot the shape of tomorrow's weather. The Pacific is alive, in constant motion, an organism that inhales with tides and exhales with storms. You drift closer now, the waves taking shape. Their crests flash briefly with light before vanishing into troughs that look almost black. Somewhere below life glimmers faintly phytoplankton, releasing tiny sparks of bioluminescence, billions of microscopic lanterns creating the illusion of stars beneath you. Scientists estimate there are trillions of living organisms in a single cubic kilometer here, an entire galaxy hidden in salt water. And that's not poetic exaggeration. It's literal. Every drop teems with DNA, with mystery, with motion, too small for the human eye, but large enough to keep the planet breathing. You start to understand that the Pacific isn't just water, it's time itself. Every ripple carries memory of storms, migrations, and even the footsteps of creatures that crossed its vanished bridges long ago. Somewhere under the surface, sound travels faster than in air. A whale song that started near Japan might reach the coast of California days later, wrapping the globe in invisible threads of communication. Scientists still argue whether these calls are navigation tools, emotional language, or something stranger, a shared consciousness among giants of the deep. And then there's the sense of scale. The deepest parts of this ocean drop down nearly 7 miles, while its width stretches over 10,000 miles from Indonesia to Panama. That's roughly a quarter of Earth's circumference. You could fly for 10 hours straight and still be staring down at blue. And somehow, humans have mapped the surface of Mars better than the floor of this sea. It's humbling, isn't it, to realize that the planet we live on remains mostly unknown, hidden under waves we can't see through. As the moonlight slips across the surface, your mind drifts to what might be below. Mountains taller than Everest, trenches wider than canyons, creatures that light themselves like neon signs, and maybe, just maybe, things that no one has ever seen. In a way, the Pacific keeps secrets, not because it wants to, but because we're simply not ready to understand them. You hover there at halfway between the sky and the abyss, feeling the paradox of it all. Peaceful, but alive. Familiar, yet alien. Scientists still debate whether Earth's oceans were filled from within water, spewed from volcanic gases as the planet cooled, or whether icy comets brought them from deep space. Either way, every drop you see tonight might have traveled through the cosmos before becoming part of this vast Pacific dreamscape. A soft gust of wind brushes across your face, and the air tastes faintly of salt and mystery. You let your eyelids grow heavier. Somewhere out there, a storm is forming waves, gathering strength, wails calling through the night. And somewhere else, deep under a calm surface, volcanoes hum with molten light. The Pacific never sleeps, it only shifts between dreams. And as you float quietly over it, the heartbeat of Earth syncs with your own. You feel small, yes, but perfectly balanced, perfectly still. Just one breath among billions, listening to the ocean that keeps the world alive. You're still gliding across that vast blue expanse when a quiet thought drifts in. How did this even begin? The Pacific seems eternal, as if it's been here forever. But in truth, it's a survivor of planetary violence, reborn from collisions that shattered worlds before yours was even recognizable. Picture the Earth nearly 200 million years ago, one giant supercontinent, Pangaea, wrapped around a single massive ocean called Panthalassa. Over time, the continents began to crack and drift apart, pulled by invisible forces beneath the crust. The fracture that tore Pangaea into pieces didn't just create the Atlantic, it left behind the ancestor of the Pacific, an ancient ocean that refused to die. The Pacific's birth was fiery, not peaceful. You can almost hear it, the grinding of plates, the hiss of magma meeting water, the booming collapse of new crust forming under pressure. It's strange to think that this calm, endless blue once glowed red from molten rock. Even now, that same energy still simmers underneath. Scientists believe the oldest parts of the Pacific floor are over 180 million years old, though most of it is constantly recycled by subduction zones. Imagine an ocean that rebuilds itself every few hundred million years, swallowing its own past to make room for new beginnings. That's the Pacific, ancient and newborn at once. You peer down, and it's like looking into the memory of the planet. Beneath the soft waves, the ocean floor spreads outward like a patchwork quilt of tectonic plates. The Pacific Plate, the largest single piece of Earth's crust, is so big it could hold all the continents combined. It moves about the speed your fingernails grow, but its consequences are anything but slow. That crawling pace drags entire islands across the sea, pushes up mountain chains, and occasionally wipes out civilizations when those forces release their stored-up rage. Somewhere in your imagination, you can see it, an immense underwater ridge glowing faintly with heat stretching for tens of thousands of miles. It's called the East Pacific Rise, a kind of volcanic assembly line where magma rises and cools to form new sea floor. It's one of the few places on Earth where creation never stops. Every second, the planet adds about 6 square feet of new crust here. By the time you finish this sentence, the Pacific has literally grown larger. But not forever. Along its edges, subduction zones devour what the ridges create, sliding it back into the mantle like pages being rewritten in a never-ending book. You remember that phrase, the circle of life. It turns out the Earth invented that long before anything started walking on 2 legs. Somewhere deep beneath Hawaii, a plume of molten rock bubbles upward, forming volcano after volcano as the Pacific Plate slowly drifts northwest. Each eruption eventually cools, erodes, and sinks, leaving behind a trail of islands like footprints across time. Scientists call it a hotspot chain. But to the ancient Polynesians, it must have felt like the gods leaving stepping stones across the ocean. Modern geology and myth somehow fit together perfectly here. 2 languages telling the same story in different accents. You glide lower, imagining yourself drifting just above one of these volcanic islands as it's being born. The water boils, the air trembles, and plumes of steam rise like spirits into the sky. In a few centuries, what was once a mountain of fire will become a lush tropical paradise filled with birds' forests and quiet lagoons. That's the Pacific's secret magic. It takes chaos and turns it into beauty. But beauty comes at a cost. Earthquakes ripple across the Pacific's margins, daily reshaping coasts with casual indifference. Japan, Chile, Alaska, New Zealand all sit perched on this restless border, where oceanic crust slides beneath continents. Entire histories have changed because of these invisible movements. The 2011 Tohoku earthquake, for instance, shifted Japan 8 feet eastward. The energy released was so immense that it slightly changed the tilt of Earth's axis. You wouldn't notice it, of course, but the planet does. Scientists still argue whether Earth's internal heat engine is slowing down or just cycling through phases. If it's slowing, the day might come when the Pacific stops growing and starts shrinking, when the continents move together again to form another supercontinent, maybe Amasia. Imagine that a new world rising out of the bones of the old one continents, kissing again after hundreds of millions of years apart. The Pacific would vanish beneath them like a swallowed memory. You feel a strange melancholy at that thought. This endless sea that defines the planet might one day fade into geological history. But that's the quiet beauty of it. The Pacific doesn't mind. It's already seen dozens of oceans rise and fall, mountains built, and broken species appear and disappear. You, on the other hand, are just here for the blink of an eye, listening to its ancient hum like a bedtime story told by the Earth itself. A gentle current rolls beneath you, as if the planet just exhaled. The stars shimmer faintly above the horizon, and the Milky Way mirrors itself in the dark below. Somewhere, a whale breaches, spraying a mist of silver into the night air. It's humbling, almost funny to realize that every breath you take carries atoms that once swirled through this ocean, evaporated into clouds, and fell again as rain thousands of years later. You're not separate from the Pacific. You're part of its cycle. You close your eyes for a moment, and the planet spins silently on beneath you. No ticking clock, no boundaries, just motion, the same slow motion that once tore a supercontinent apart and built the ocean you now float above. And maybe that's the real mystery, not that the Pacific was born from violence. but that something so turbulent could become so soothing. You drift deeper into the night, the stars fading into a silver mist as you feel the ocean breathing beneath you. It's calm for now, but you know that stillness is an illusion. Beneath that glassy surface lies one of the most volatile and dangerous zones on Earth, an invisible horseshoe-shaped ring encircling almost the entire Pacific Basin. You can't see it, but you can feel it like a pulse under the planet's skin. The scientists call it the Ring of Fire. If you could peel back the water, you'd see an immense scar encircling the Pacific, a fiery necklace of volcanoes and fault lines stretching from New Zealand to Japan, across to Alaska, then down the coasts of North and South America. It holds about 75% of all the active volcanoes on the planet. That means nearly every eruption you've ever seen on the news, every earthquake that's shaken a coastal city, has probably been born right here from this restless loop of molten fury. It's hard to imagine such rage lurking beneath something so peaceful. You float above it, picturing magma rising like slow lightning through fractures in the crust. It builds mountains beneath the sea, creating chains of volcanic islands. And sometimes it doesn't stop there. It breaks the surface in violent bursts of fire and steam. Entire islands have been born overnight, while others vanish just as fast. Nature apparently has a flair for drama. And yet, it's not chaos. It's rhythm. The Pacific's crust slides under neighboring plates in a constant slow-motion collision. The edges buckle and melt, giving rise to volcanoes, while energy builds silently until the Earth finally can't hold it anymore. That's when the shaking begins. One moment you're sipping tea in a quiet coastal town. The next, the ground rolls like the tide beneath your feet. You probably remember some of the famous ones. The 1960 Chile quake, the largest ever recorded, so powerful it shortened the day by a fraction of a second. Or the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami that struck without warning, though it was born from the same tectonic forces at the Pacific's edge. These aren't isolated incidents. They're part of an ongoing conversation between plates that never stop moving. Scientists still argue whether there's a predictable pattern to this chaos, a kind of planetary metronome that ticks to the rhythm of deep Earth's heartbeat. Some suggest that global seismic activity rises and falls in cycles every few decades, while others say it's pure randomness. The truth, as usual, is somewhere between math and mystery. You imagine drifting over Japan, now tracing the jagged line of the Japanese archipelago. Beneath it lies the subduction of the Pacific Plate under the Eurasian Plate, a kind of slow dive into molten oblivion. Every inch that Japan rises out of the water, the Pacific sinks beneath it somewhere else. It's a breathtaking trade-off, creation and destruction dancing together endlessly. And then there's the curious thing about volcanoes. They're not just fiery pits of doom, they're givers too. The ash they spew fertilizes land thousands of miles away, turning deserts green and enriching the soil. Some of the most fertile farmland in the world, like that in Indonesia and the Philippines, owes its richness to the very same volcanoes that once terrified their ancestors. You could say that the Pacific's fury keeps the continents alive. You hover over Hawaii again for a moment, where Mauna Loa and Kilauea rise like sleeping giants. Their molten hearts pump new land into existence, grain by grain. When they erupt, it's both terrifying and oddly beautiful, the earth painting with fire. The lava flows into the ocean, hissing, glowing, then cooling into black rock that extends the island just a little further into the sea. And as you float above that scene, it feels like watching a planet create itself in real time. There's an eerie thought that creeps in, though. The same forces that gift us islands can also erase entire civilizations. Archaeologists believe that the eruption of a volcano called Rabaul in Papua New Guinea may have been one of the loudest explosions in human history, heard from over 1,800 miles away. And then there's the mysterious disappearance of whole communities around the Pacific Rim, ancient villages, found buried in ash, their stories lost, their names forgotten. You might think of the ocean as something separate from the land, but here in the Ring of Fire, they're inseparable. Each tremor reshapes the coastline, each eruption redraws the horizon. The Pacific is both cradle and executioner, sculptor and destroyer. A strange calm settles over you as you realize everything in this world depends on movement. The quiet surface above you, the air in your lungs, even your own heartbeat, all of it exists because something deeper refuses to stop. Far below in the dark, hydrothermal vents hiss and bubble with life. Bacteria cling to volcanic chimneys, feeding on sulfur and metal, thriving where sunlight never reaches. They're reminders that life doesn't just survive chaos, it needs it. Scientists still debate whether these volcanic vents might be the very birthplace of life on Earth. Some even believe that the same chemical reactions happening here might exist on icy moons like Europa or Enceladus. So in a way, as you float over the Pacific, you might be staring at the origin story of everything. The waves roll beneath you again, and the sound is low and soothing, a heartbeat, a whisper. You can almost hear the earth murmuring to itself. Don't worry. This is how I breathe. You smile a little, half asleep, thinking about how everything, mountains, islands, even you, is just temporary decoration on this restless living planet. The Pacific doesn't mind. It keeps moving, reshaping, renewing. And for tonight, all you need to do is drift and listen to that ancient pulse echoing through the deep. You drift downward, now deeper and deeper, until the blue turns to ink and then to something darker still. The sunlight fades into nothing but a faint shimmer far above. You're entering a place few humans have ever truly seen, the Challenger Deep, the lowest point on Earth's surface, tucked inside the Mariana Trench. It lies nearly 7 miles below the waves, east of the Philippines, in a part of the Pacific so remote that if Mount Everest were dropped here, its peak would still be more than a mile underwater. The pressure down here is almost beyond imagination. Over 1,000 times what you feel at sea level. If you tried to dive without a submersible, you wouldn't be crushed instantly. You'd simply cease to be a U-atoms redistributed by an indifferent ocean. But here in this story, you're safe. You drift weightlessly, your thoughts the only thing sinking. It's a place of whispers and slow motion. The seafloor looks like wrinkled black silk, and a fine haze of marine snow drifts downward, flakes of dead plankton fish scales, and the quiet dust of the upper world. Every second, the remains of life from above rain softly onto the trench, creating a slow snowfall that never melts. It's oddly peaceful. Scientists first reached the Challenger Deep in 1960 when the Trieste descended through the crushing darkness. It was like dropping a metal bubble into another planet. The crew reported seeing a flatfish near the bottom, a claim that later sparked endless debate. Since then, only a handful of explorers have followed film director James Cameron in 2012 and a few robotic missions after that. Despite our technology, the deepest part of the Pacific remains largely unvisited. If aliens ever studied Earth, they'd probably know more about this trench than we do. You imagine yourself there now, hovering above the seafloor, your lights slicing through a pitch-black world. It's not empty, far from it. Strange creatures float through the gloom, amphipods that look like translucent shrimp, ghostly sea cucumbers rolling like tumbleweeds, and fish with faces shaped by pressure into something between a smile and a grimace. They've adapted in ways that seem almost supernatural. One amphipod species produces aluminum in its tissues to resist the crushing force. Others glow faintly, communicating through flashes of light instead of sound. And then there's the eerie silence. No waves, no current, just the slow hiss of your breath and the crackle of your submersible's hull flexing under the unimaginable pressure. Yet in that silence, you feel an ancient pulse, the heartbeat of the Earth itself. Down here, every vibration from above, every quake, every volcanic rumble travels through the planet's bones. The trench listens. It's strange to think that this immense pit exists because of movement, not stillness. The Mariana Trench was born from the Pacific Plate sliding beneath the smaller Mariana Plate, a process that drags the seafloor downward like a conveyor belt into the mantle. This is subduction Earth recycling itself. You're floating above a planetary recycling center where old crust is melted, reabsorbed, and later reborn as new land thousands of miles away. There's a poetic thought that surfaces may be destruction and renewal are the same thing here. Scientists still argue whether the deepest trenches are stable long-term features or whether they migrate and reshape over geological time. If they shift, it means the Earth's deepest scars are never permanent. They heal, then reopen somewhere else. Even pain, it seems, moves on. Your lights catch something glinting, a small object half buried in sediment. It looks out of place. When the robotic submersible Nereus explored this region in 2014, it found bits of plastic wrappers resting on the seafloor perfectly preserved. Human fingerprints 7 miles down. It's both tragic and absurd, our ability to leave a mark where no sunlight has ever reached. The deepest point on the planet is now part museum, part landfill. You can't help but smirk at the irony. Even our mistakes are ambitious. Still, life endures. Tiny microorganisms thrive in conditions that would kill almost anything else. Some feed on methane that seeps from cracks in the crust, others on trace chemicals from decaying matter. Scientists studying these microbes discovered something unexpected: unique enzymes that might one day help clean pollution or even fight disease. It's as if the ocean hides its cures right beside its scars. You pause, listening to your own heartbeat echo in your ears. For a fleeting moment, you realize that this place, this trench, feels less like a void and more like a cathedral. The darkness isn't empty. It's sacred, layered with the memory of everything that has ever fallen from above. The bones of whales, the shells of plankton, the dust of continents, all gathered here, waiting quietly. And when you think about it, that's what makes the Challenger Deep so mysterious. It's not just about how deep it is, it's about what it represents. The lowest point on the planet is also one of the most alive, a paradox that humbles every explorer who's ever dared to visit. You start to rise now slowly, as if carried by invisible hands. The light returns in thin streaks of blue, the pressure easing. You glance back one last time at that endless black valley below, and it almost seems to wink back at you. Maybe it's just a trick of the light. Or maybe the Pacific's oldest secret just noticed you noticing it As you drift upward toward shallower waters, you think about how much the ocean mirrors the human heart. Vast, mysterious, dark in places, but always beating, always alive beneath the surface. You rise from the trench's shadow into a twilight world where light filters faintly through blue water, and the pressure eases just enough for life to spread its wings again. Out here beneath the calm surface lies an alien landscape that few ever imagine. A mountain range taller than the Rockies valleys, deeper than any canyon, and plateaus larger than entire countries. These are the ghost mountains of the Pacific, the sunken peaks and drowned continents that hint at a very different Earth. You hover above one of them now, a seamount of volcano that never quite made it to the surface. It stands alone in the darkness, its slopes covered in coral and strange sponges that glow with bioluminescent light. Thousands of such mountains rise silently from the abyssal plains. Scientists estimate there may be over 100,000 across the Pacific floor. Many have never been mapped, let alone seen. If the ocean were drained, the Earth would look nothing like the blue marble you know. It would be a rugged desert of black stone ridges and plateaus carved by time and tectonics. The seamount below you is ancient, maybe 50 million years old. Once it erupted violently, belching lava and ash into the air. Then it sank back beneath the waves as the Pacific plate drifted away from its hotspot, the weight of the cooling rock pulling it downward. Over millions of years, coral grew atop it, forming a ring-shaped reef that now circles an empty lagoon. This is how atolls are born. A natural process so slow and deliberate, it feels like watching the Earth breathe in centuries instead of seconds. There's something haunting about these underwater mountains. They're ghosts of land that once touched the sky, reminders that even continents can drown. You pass over one plateau so vast it could fit the British Isles several times over. The Ontong Java Plateau. It's made of ancient volcanic rock, possibly the remnant of a super eruption that changed the planet's climate millions of years ago. No one knows exactly how it formed. Some geologists say it's a colossal lava flood from the deep mantle. Others whisper it could be the scar of an asteroid impact. Scientists still argue over it, but the ocean keeps its secret. A strange comfort comes with the thought that Earth's greatest mysteries lie not in the stars, but beneath your feet, or rather, beneath your fins. Every ridge, every trench, every plateau is a page in the planet's autobiography, written in stone instead of ink. The Pacific seafloor records the drift of continents, the birth of islands, and the slow rearrangement of the planet's skin. And like any good story, it's filled with missing chapters. You glide past another mountain flat top this time, like someone sliced its peak clean off. These are guyot's seamounts that once stood above sea level before erosion and sinking wore them down. Imagine that entire islands that once basked in sunlight, surrounded by birds and forests, now buried miles beneath the waves. Some may have hosted life long before humans existed. Their bones lie hidden under layers of sediment like time capsules waiting to be found. A gentle current brushes by, and you catch a glimpse of something unexpected, a school of small silver fish moving in perfect synchrony, weaving through the corals that cling to the seamount slopes. Even here, miles from land deep under the surface, life finds a way to make itself at home. The Pacific's mountains are teeming with it. Scientists have discovered new species of crabs, worms, and jelly-like creatures here, some of which may hold the keys to understanding how life began. You can't help but wonder how much of this will remain undiscovered. Even with modern sonar and satellites, less than 20% of the ocean floor has been accurately mapped. The rest is guesswork, a dark expanse filled with outlines and probabilities. Somewhere out there, another ghost mountain might be rising this very moment, its summit glowing faintly as molten rock meets icy water. The earth, it seems, never stops sculpting itself. A soft tremor rolls through the water. Maybe it's a distant earthquake, or maybe it's just the weight of the ocean settling. You picture tectonic plates grinding against each other miles below the slow, unstoppable ballet that built the Pacific Basin. And in that moment, it strikes you. These mountains, these hidden ridges, they're the lungs of the world. They exchange minerals, gases, and energy that ripple through the entire planet. They regulate chemistry, nurture ecosystems, and shape the currents that touch every shore. You drift closer to one plateau, its ridges lined with manganese nodules, smooth black spheres that look almost artificial. They're made of iron, nickel, and cobalt, slowly growing layer by layer over millions of years. Some are no larger than marbles, others the size of baseballs. Entire countries have started eyeing these nodules as a source of rare metals for batteries and electronics. Deep-sea mining expeditions are being planned, and while the idea sounds practical, it also feels wrong. To scrape away these formations is to erase geological art that took eons to create. The ocean, as always, offers temptation and tests restraint. Somewhere in the distance, you hear the faint rumble of a submarine volcano erupting. It's a low, rolling sound that travels through your bones. A plume of superheated water bursts upward, scattering tiny sparks of light. In the near darkness, it looks almost alive. You can't tell where the earth ends and the sea begins. It's all part of the same living thing. Maybe that's the secret of these ghost mountains. They remind you that nothing on Earth ever truly disappears. It just changes form, shifts shape, finds a new rhythm. Continents sink, volcanoes sleep, oceans deepen, but the story continues. The Pacific has been writing that story for hundreds of millions of years, and you're just catching a few sentences before drifting off. You float quietly above the plateau, the faint light of your thoughts reflecting on the unseen peaks below. It's comforting in a way to know that even in darkness, the world never stops creating beauty. You don't have to understand it, you just have to listen. As you drift onward through the deep Pacific night, the seafloor rises subtly beneath you. From the darkness emerges something massive, an outline that looks more like a continent than a mountain chain. It's faint, drowned, and half buried in silt, but unmistakably there. You've reached one of the ocean's strangest secrets, Zealandia, the almost forgotten eighth continent that lies almost entirely beneath the waves. You hover in silence, letting the enormity of it settle in. A continent hidden under the Pacific, it sounds like fantasy like Atlantis or a bedtime myth. But it's real. Stretching across nearly 2 million square miles, Zealandia is about half the size of Australia. 94% of it lies underwater, with only the peaks of its highest mountains visible today, those we know as New Zealand. You picture it as it once was tens of millions of years ago, a vast green landmass full of forests and rivers connected to Antarctica and Australia before drifting away. Then, as the tectonic plates shifted, Zealandia began to sink, slowly, gracefully, like an ancient ship going down in still water. Some scientists think it disappeared because the crust beneath it was unusually thin. Others say it was pulled downward by the weight of its own volcanic history. Scientists still argue whether it truly deserves to be called a continent or if it's just an oversized fragment. But you can't help but feel that if something this enormous can slip beneath the surface without anyone noticing for millions of years, maybe our maps are only sketches of the real world. You glide lower, tracing what was once a coastline. Coral now covers what might have been plains and forests of kelp sway where rivers once ran. Fish dart between rock formations shaped like cliffs, and along the seabed lie the fossils of trees and shells that once knew sunlight. In the stillness, you feel an almost sacred weight, the ocean's ability to bury entire worlds and keep them perfectly preserved. Every so often, an earthquake shakes the region, small reminders that Zealandia is not dead. It's still alive in geological time, still moving, still rising and sinking as the Pacific plate grinds against the Australian plate. Some researchers even think that parts of it are resurfacing very, very slowly. Imagine that a continent emerging again after being forgotten for 70 million years. You think about how long that is, how many species lived and died in the time it took for Zealandia to vanish. Dinosaurs once roamed its forests. Ancient birds, giant and flightless, stalked its valleys. And then, without ceremony, the land simply gave up its breath and slipped beneath the waves. The ocean, patient and unhurried, took it back. In a way, it feels like the Pacific's favorite trick hides something in plain sight. Even now, satellites struggle to detect the shape of Zealandia beneath the water. It doesn't shout its existence. It hums quietly beneath the waves, content to be half forgotten. There's something oddly comforting about that, a reminder that not everything extraordinary demands to be seen. As you drift along the edge of what was once the southern coast, a deep trench yawns below you, the Hikurangi Trench. It's where the Pacific plate dives beneath Zealandia, creating earthquakes and sometimes tsunamis that ripple across the region. You can almost feel the slow grinding motion beneath you, like the planet exhaling in its sleep. Then something catches your attention, a shape gliding through the water. A shadow longer than a bus, moving silently. For a moment you think it's a whale. But then the shadow twists upward, revealing a school of giant squids, their tentacles glowing faintly blue. They pass through the remains of an ancient canyon, indifferent to the history buried around them. Life adapts always. Even over a drowned continent, the ocean writes new stories. Scientists recently drilled into Zealandia's submerged crust, pulling up cores of ancient rock and fossilized pollen. Those samples told a story of warmth and lush greenery, of mountain streams and fertile plains. One researcher described holding a fragment of ancient soil and realizing it came from a forest that hadn't seen sunlight in 25 million years. It was like shaking hands with a ghost, they said. You can almost feel that ghost here, the echo of wind rustling through long vanished leaves. You remember that the Polynesians, thousands of years ago, navigated these waters without maps or compasses. They read the stars, the waves, and the flight of birds. Perhaps they knew of Zealandia not by name, but by instinct, feeling its presence beneath the currents like a whisper in the deep. Maybe that's why their myths speak of lost lands and sunken homes. What science calls geology, they called memory. You rise slightly, watching the faint glow of plankton swirl in your wake. The vastness around you feels both humbling and strangely personal. Zealandia isn't just a lost land, it's proof that the earth still keeps secrets even from itself. And somewhere far below, another mountain shifts, another trench deepens, another fragment sinks into quiet darkness. You realize that the Pacific doesn't just contain mysteries, it is one constantly rewriting itself. You take a slow breath. The water hums with low vibrations, and in that moment you feel small but perfectly at peace. The drowned continent rests beneath you, cradled in blue eternity, and for tonight at least, it feels content to stay asleep. You rise from the drowned mountains of Zealandia and find yourself crossing an ocean speckled with tiny green dots. Islands, thousands of them, stretch across the Pacific like freckles on the face of the planet. Some are volcanic and rugged, some ringed by white sand and coral, others so small they barely break the surface before being swallowed by waves again. You realize you're gliding over a living mosaic, a collection of worlds within the world. Every island here tells a story, though many of those stories begin the same way, with fire. Volcanoes are the architects of this ocean, pushing molten rock upward until it cools and hardens into new land. Some of those newborn islands are still steaming as they emerge, the air around them heavy with sulfur and the sound of crackling stone. Imagine the sight, a plume of smoke rising from the ocean birds circling overhead, waves hissing against fresh lava. And just like that, a new piece of Earth exists. But islands don't last forever. The same Pacific that births them also takes them back. Rain waves and time wear them down, grain by grain. Some sink beneath their own weight, their volcanic roots cooling and pulling downward into the deep. You pass over one of these, an atoll, a perfect ring of coral encircling a lagoon where a mountain once stood. It's like the ghost of an island, the reef still alive, even though the land it grew around is long gone. Life refuses to vanish. It just rearranges itself. Scientists call this process Darwin's reef progression, after the man who first realized that coral reefs grow upward to stay near sunlight, even as the land beneath them sinks. It's one of nature's quiet miracles, death and life locked in a graceful dance. The old mountain disappears, but its memory glows in turquoise lagoons and coral gardens that stretch for miles. Not all islands drift quietly into the past, though. Some move. You pass over a cluster of them in Micronesia that seem to wander literally. These floating islets are made of shifting sand and coral debris, reshaped constantly by tides and storms. A storm can erase one overnight and build another the next morning. They're nomads, proof that even land is just a temporary concept out here. And then there are the human stories, the micronations, the communities so small they can disappear from maps but not from memory. You picture a tiny island in Tuvalu or Kiribati, where children play soccer on runways, where the ocean laps at front doors, and where people greet every sunrise, knowing their homeland might be gone within a century. Rising sea levels are slowly claiming these islands, one by one. Scientists predict some could vanish entirely by the end of this century, becoming the first nations lost to climate change. It's a sobering thought, yet the people remain cheerful, calling themselves the people of the waves. You can't help but admire their defiant smiling as they live between creation and extinction. You drift toward a newer island now, Nishinoshima, near Japan. It was born in 2013 from a massive underwater eruption and has been growing ever since, its black slopes steaming like a living creature. Satellite photos show it changing shape almost monthly, like a breathing thing. Scientists love it, calling it a natural laboratory. But you can't shake the feeling that the Pacific is simply playing sculpting new worlds the way a child builds sandcastles. A playful current pushes you toward the Tonga Kermadec Arc, where a line of active volcanoes bubbles beneath the surface. Somewhere below you, an island called Hunga Tonga Hunga Ha'apai once rose from an eruption in 2015, only to be blasted apart by another in 2022. That explosion was so powerful, it sent shockwaves around the world and created lightning bolts that flashed 400,000 times in a single hour. The island is gone now, wiped clean. The Pacific giveth, the Pacific taketh away. And still life moves in. Seabirds are usually the first colonists, carrying seeds in their feathers. Then come insects drifting on the wind. Eventually, plants root in the new soil, and within years, the island hums with life. Scientists studying Surtsey, an island born off Iceland's coast in 1963, watched as it went from barren rock to ecosystem in just a few decades. You imagine that same process happening here somewhere in the middle of nowhere, an invisible miracle repeated again and again. You can't help but laugh softly. The Pacific has more islands than there are days in a year, and yet it never gets tired of making more. Maybe it's a little like us, constantly rebuilding, constantly changing, constantly trying again. As you glide above this endless constellation of islands, the night sky reflects on the sea below, and for a moment, you can't tell where the stars end and the islands begin. You realize you're looking at two oceans, one above one, below each, reflecting the other's mysteries. Somewhere far beneath you, tectonic plates grind. Somewhere on a sunlit shore, a volcano smokes lazily. And somewhere else, a coral reef grows upward toward the light. Everything here is in motion, slow, eternal motion. The Pacific never stops whispering to itself, never stops building new dreams from old ashes. You drift a little lower, close enough to see the glow of plankton in a lagoon, tiny blue sparks swirling like galaxies in miniature. It's beautiful, fleeting, and perfect. You smile in the darkness, realizing that this is what the Pacific does best. It reminds you that even the smallest thing can shimmer against infinity. The water shifts again, and the color of the ocean changes from deep indigo to a hazy gray-blue. You've reached a place that scientists once refused to name, a swirling, shapeless patch in the middle of the North Pacific. It's not land, and it's not quite ocean either. It's called the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. But don't let the name fool you. It's not an island of trash you can walk on. It's something stranger, more ghostly. A vast gyre of floating debris stretching over 1 million square miles, turning slowly like the hand of a broken clock. From above, it looks deceptively calm. The waves are low and gentle, the water eerily clear. But as you look closer, you start to see it. The tiny, glittering fragments that catch the light. Not fish, not foam. Plastic. Billions of particles drifting through the water like artificial plankton. Bottles, fishing nets, toys, toothbrushes, and microbeads. Each piece carried here by circular ocean currents that act like conveyor belts. It's a slow, spiraling trap, one that's been gathering the ocean's leftovers for decades. You drift lower, watching the debris move in hypnotic rhythm. It feels wrong to call it ugly. It's tragic, yes, but strangely mesmerizing. Some pieces are coated in algae, others colonized by barnacles or tiny crabs. What began as pollution has somehow become habitat. Scientists studying the patch found entire ecosystems thriving here. Communities of organisms that never existed before, clinging to floating plastic as if it were coral. They call it the plastosphere, a new biome, born from human negligence. It's unsettling and fascinating at the same time. Life, as always, refuses to take sides. Give it a surface, any surface, and it will grow. You spot a small jellyfish gliding past a bottle cap and a school of fish darting between tangled nets. Even amid our waste, the ocean finds a way to make something living. It's almost forgiving. Almost. The truth is, no one really knows how big this patch is. Some estimates say it's twice the size of Texas. Others claim it's closer to the area of Europe. It's not solid, it's diffuse, made up of layers of microplastics suspended throughout the water column. You could sail through it for hours without realizing it's there, and yet every cup of water you scoop up would contain fragments of something once made by human hands. A hairbrush, a bag, a broken toy all melted into anonymity. Scientists still argue about how to fix it. Skimming it would take centuries. Burning it would release toxins. Some say the real solution isn't cleaning up, but stopping the flow cutting off the endless river of plastic that pours into the sea from rivers, cities, and ships. And they're right. Every year, about 11 million tons of plastic enter the ocean. It's hard to picture that number, so think of it this way. It's like dumping a garbage truck full of plastic into the sea every single minute. You float silently above this slow-moving vortex, feeling a quiet guilt that isn't entirely your own. This isn't just pollution, it's archaeology. Every item here tells a story of convenience, of consumption, of human fingerprints, carried far beyond their reach. Somewhere beneath you drifts a shampoo bottle from the 1980s, still intact. The ocean doesn't forget easily. And yet amidst all that, something miraculous is happening. Bacteria have been discovered that can eat plastic, breaking it down into harmless components. It's not perfect, not fast enough to solve the crisis, but it's a beginning. Life is adapting to our mistakes faster than we can correct them. You can't help but admire that in a bittersweet way. The waves lap softly against unseen walls of current, and you realize how quiet it is here. No birds, no whales, no sound, but the rhythmic swirl of the gyre. It's the stillest part of the Pacific, too far for nutrients, too deep for life, too isolated for ships. A desert of water and plastic. And then just as you start to drift away, you notice something unexpected, a faint sparkle under the surface, moving in slow circles. It's a school of lanternfish, using the floating debris as shade. They glow faintly, casting blue halos on the plastic below. The irony is too perfect. Even here in humanity's great mistake, beauty survives. You let out a long breath, feeling the contradiction of it all. The Pacific isn't angry. It doesn't judge. It just absorbs, transforms, and moves on. That's what it's always done, turning lava into islands, bones into reefs, and now plastic into living habitat. You start to understand that the ocean doesn't think in right or wrong. It thinks in cycles. Still, you can't shake the feeling that it's watching, patiently, silently waiting to see whether humanity will learn to match its rhythm or be swept away by it. As the current carries you out of the gyre, the glitter fades, replaced again by open water. The air feels cleaner somehow, though you know that's only an illusion. The Pacific stretches before you, vast and unending, as if whispering, "You can do better next time." You smile faintly. Maybe you will. You float now in a part of the ocean where the surface looks calm, almost too calm. The sun above flickers through thin clouds, and the water beneath you feels warm, almost heavy. You're crossing a region ruled by an invisible force that can reshape the weather of the entire planet, El Neo. It starts subtly. The trade winds that usually push warm water westward across the Pacific begin to falter. When they weaken, that warm water drifts back east, pooling along the coasts of South America. The result, the Pacific's temperature rises by just a few degrees, but the consequences ripple across the world. You hover above the equator looking down at what seems like nothing, just ocean. But beneath that shimmering skin, you're watching the planet breathe differently. Normally, cold water wells up from the deep, rich in nutrients, feeding fish and plankton. During El Niño, that upwelling slows or even stops. The sea grows still and strangely lifeless, like it's holding its breath. Fishermen from Peru to Indonesia have known this pattern for centuries. Their nets grow empty. The seabirds vanish. Even the air feels wrong. It's strange to think that a single stretch of warm water can change everything. Rainfall in Africa, drought in Australia, hurricanes in the Atlantic. You might be sitting in a quiet kitchen in Kansas, wondering why the summer's been so brutal, never realizing the reason is swirling right here beneath your feet. Scientists call it a teleconnection, a distant link that ties faraway climates together like strings on a web. Somewhere above you, satellites track every inch of this slow-spreading warmth. The colors on their maps shift from blue to red, a visual fever spreading across the equator. Meteorologists hunch over screens arguing whether this will be a mild event or a monster. Because El Niño has moods. Sometimes it whispers and sometimes it roars. The 1997-98 event, for instance, caused floods, fires, and storms that killed over 20,000 people worldwide. And yet a year or two later, the cycle flipped to La Niña, its colder, opposite twin. The Pacific apparently believes in balance. You can feel that balance now, on the slow rhythm of the ocean trying to correct itself. Warm water rises, cold water sinks, winds shift, clouds gather and drift away. It's as if the entire planet is one enormous heart, and this is the beat. Scientists still debate what truly triggers El Niño's start and end. Some think it's the trade winds, others say it's deep ocean pressure waves traveling thousands of miles. The truth, most likely, is both and neither. The Pacific plays by its own rules. You float closer to the surface, feeling the warmth radiate upward. It's comfortable, even pleasant, but also eerie. Beneath the calm chaos, brews. Coral reefs bleach white from the heat, their symbiotic algae dying off. Fish migrate to cooler waters, leaving empty silence behind. In some places, heavy rains flood entire coastlines. In others, the same warmth blocks rainfall for months. Farmers watch their crops wilt under skies that won't open. And still from up here, the Pacific looks beautiful, glassy, and serene, a perfect disguise. You can almost hear a faint hum, the sound of temperature, if such a thing exists. It's the whisper of energy being redistributed across the earth. That's what El Niño really is, a reminder that the world is one system, every drop of water connected to every breath of air. You can't change one without touching the other. As you drift eastward toward the Peruvian coast, the scent of salt grows stronger. Below you, a current called the Humboldt usually carries cool water north, nurturing one of the most productive fisheries on the planet. But now, during El Niño, it falters. Anchovy populations collapse. Sea lions starve. The ocean's delicate food web trembles one link at a time. And then, when the cycle finally ends, when the trade winds pick up again, when the ocean exhales, the Pacific resets itself. The cold water surges back. The fish return. The reefs try to heal. Everything finds its rhythm once more. Until the next time. You think about how much of a life works like that. Periods of chaos, then calm. pressure then release. The ocean teaches patience even through disaster. A lone frigate bird glides overhead, wings stretched wide against a pale sky. It's followed this warmth across half the planet, living off whatever drifts its way. You watch it tilt slightly, using the faintest breath of air to stay aloft. There's grace in that, adapting instead of resisting. Somewhere below, you can almost imagine the voice of the Pacific, deep and slow, murmuring, "Don't fear the change. I've been doing this for millions of years." You exhale softly. The surface ripples with the faint reflection of clouds, and for the first time, you notice how the ocean and the sky look the same, fluid, restless, alive. Maybe they're not separate at all, just two halves of the same being. As night begins to fall again, the warm water glows faintly under the fading sun, like the planet itself is blushing. You float above it quietly, a tiny observer of a process that can shake continents and still lull you to sleep. You drift through the twilight once more, the air still and the sea beneath you, rippling with a subtle rhythm that feels older than memory. Somewhere below the Pacific hide stories that don't belong to time tales of ships that vanished without a trace, aircraft that never reached their destinations, and sailors who swore they saw lights beneath the waves. Tonight, you've crossed into that stretch of ocean where mystery and reality blur into one, the realm of the lost. The Pacific has always been generous with secrets. From the frozen north near Alaska to the tropical calm of Micronesia, its expanse has swallowed more vessels than any other ocean on Earth. Some went down in storms so fierce that even the clouds seemed to scream. Others slipped beneath calm seas, victims of simple mistakes magnified by distance and isolation. You can't help but feel that this ocean remembers every one of them, whispering their names through the wind. One of those whispers is Amelia Earhart. You can almost see her silver Lockheed Electra slicing through the dawn of July 1937. The radio static, the clouds closing in, the coordinates that never made sense, and then nothing. A plane carrying the first woman attempting to fly around the world vanished somewhere between Papua New Guinea and Howland Island. Decades later, bits of metal, a woman's shoe, and a handful of bones were found on Nikumaroro Island. Some scientists say they prove she made it. Others still argue it's coincidence. The Pacific, as usual, refuses to confirm. You drift farther east over waters once haunted by the ghost fleet of Truk Lagoon. Dozens of Japanese warships rest here, sunk in 1944 during Operation Hailstone, a massive U.S. assault that turned this lagoon into a graveyard of steel. Today, coral encrusts the wrecks, fish dart through shattered gun turrets, and air bubbles still rise occasionally from sealed compartments. The ocean has turned tragedy into beauty, wrapping history in color and silence. Divers call it one of the most peaceful places on Earth, though the quiet feels like reverence, not calm. You can almost picture the glow of instrument panels fading one by one, the last echo of human presence swallowed by the deep. The Pacific doesn't rush to erase, it preserves. Its cold, oxygen-poor depths slow decay, so that even now, 70 years later, cups, books, and uniforms still rest where they fell. Some say the water here feels heavier, as if weighed down by memory. Then there's the mythic stretch people love to fear. The Bermuda Triangle's quieter twin, the Dragon's Triangle near Japan. Ancient legends speak of ships vanishing amid glowing mists, compasses spinning wildly, and strange lights rising from the sea. In the 1950s, a Japanese government vessel investigating the area disappeared along with its crew of over 30 men. That incident sparked decades of speculation about magnetic anomalies, methane bubbles, and underwater volcanoes. Skeptics dismiss it all as coincidence. Believers call it proof that the Pacific has places where the laws of physics simply relax. You smile faintly. It's easy to see why people dream up stories out here. The Pacific is too vast, too quiet, too unknowable. When the horizon swallows everything you recognize, imagination fills the gaps. Maybe that's why sailors still leave offerings before crossing dangerous straits, or why pilots tap their dashboards before takeoff over open water. Tradition becomes superstition when you realize how small you are compared to what's beneath you. Beneath your feet, the ocean is black again, deeper than any light can reach. Somewhere down there near the Marshall Islands rests the wreck of the USS Indianapolis, torpedoed in 1945 after delivering parts of the atomic bomb. The ship sank in minutes, and for days, hundreds of sailors floated in the open ocean, exposed to sharks, heat, and despair. By the time rescue arrived, only 316 survived. It's one of the Pacific's darkest tales, a reminder that sometimes the ocean doesn't need to be angry to be lethal. It just needs to be itself. You sense movement nearby, a faint shimmer under the waves. For a moment it looks like light reflecting off metal, then it vanishes. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's everything. The Pacific likes to keep its stories moving like ghosts passing each other in the dark. Scientists still argue about why some wrecks are discovered perfectly preserved, while others disintegrate within years. Is it temperature pressure, microbial activity, or something less measurable, something that has to do with where they fell and how willing the ocean was to keep them? The question lingers unanswered. You float above another legend and the phantom island of Sandy Island, once charted by explorers near New Caledonia. For over a century, it appeared on maps, then vanished, when modern satellites found nothing there. Some say it sank. Others claim it never existed. You can't help but wonder whether the Pacific sometimes invents illusions just to see how long we'll believe in them. A low hum travels through the water, a passing cargo ship miles away, invisible but present. Its sound fades into the endless wash of waves. That's the thing about this ocean, even in the age of GPS and satellite imagery. It still manages to lose things. Whole vessels, yes, but also certainty. Out here, knowledge dissolves as easily as light. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the faint rhythm of the waves lull you. The Pacific's mysteries aren't just stories of disappearance. They're reminders of how fragile presence is. Everything we build, everything we send into the world eventually returns here, to salt, to silence, to memory. And as you drift onward, the night deepens. The sea stretches beneath you, vast and indifferent, carrying its hidden cargo of wrecks, legends, and unanswered questions. Somewhere below, the lights of a lost plane might still flicker once in a century, mistaken for a star. The Pacific keeps its secrets well. You can almost hear it whisper, some stories are meant to stay underwater. The surface fades behind you once again as you descend into a deeper, colder world, a place where sunlight has never existed. Here in the midnight zone, everything you thought you knew about life changes. The pressure is crushing the water black, and yet somehow this realm is alive with creatures that seem half real, half dream. You drift among faint sparks of light, tiny lanterns glowing blue, green, and crimson in the vast dark. Bioluminescence, the ocean's own language of light. Every flicker, every pulse is a message, a warning, a lure, a declaration of presence. Some flash to attract mates, others to scare predators, and some simply to say, "I am here." It's the Pacific's version of the night sky, but turned upside down. You move slowly, your body feeling lighter, your thoughts slower. Around you glide beings that would look like fantasy anywhere else. A jellyfish, its bell transparent as glass ripples like a floating crown. A vampire squid with skin the color of red wine turns itself inside out to hide. A barrel-eye fish drifts past its skull translucent, its eyes fixed upward through its own head to watch for prey above. It's strange, but you feel comforted like you're being watched over by quiet, glowing spirits. There's no need for speed here. Every creature moves with impossible patience, conserving energy in a world where food is rare and pressure immense. Even sound behaves differently. Low, muffled, resonant. You hear faint clicks, maybe the echo of distant wails, maybe something else. The ocean here feels less like a place and more like a thought, something vast and alive, whispering through the dark. And then from the shadow ahead, a faint glimmer turns into something enormous. A giant squid tentacle stretching longer than your body could measure, its eyes the size of dinner plates. For centuries, sailors told stories of monsters that pulled ships into the deep, and scientists dismissed them as myth until they finally caught one on camera. You watch it drift by, graceful and ancient, indifferent to your awe. A pulse of light passes through its body like lightning through glass, and then it's gone. Scientists still debate how creatures like this even survive. There's almost no light, little oxygen and food that falls from above, only in slow, sporadic marine snow. Some species glow to attract meals. Others can swallow prey larger than themselves, stretching their stomachs like elastic. Some can even turn invisible, their skin refracting what little light exists. The adaptations are so bizarre, they almost seem playful, as if evolution had a sense of humor down here. You drift past a glowing orb, a siphonophore, a colonial creature made of hundreds of smaller organisms acting as one. It stretches nearly the length of a blue whale. It's not a single animal, but a living network, a reminder that in this darkness, cooperation means survival. Maybe that's a lesson worth remembering above the surface, too. Every few moments, a faint light pulses through the gloom, a Morse code of survival. Some researchers think the Pacific's midnight zone contains more undiscovered species than the entire visible world combined. Every expedition brings up something new, fish that melt at normal pressure, jelly-like creatures that shimmer like oil worms that glow only when touched. The ocean still hides more than it reveals. Scientists argue whether we've even seen 1% of what's down here. But it's not just biology that's mysterious, it's sound. The bloop, that famous low-frequency rumble recorded in 1997, came from somewhere in this deep Pacific region. It was so powerful it could be heard across 3,000 miles. For years, people speculated, was it a secret military test, an iceberg collapsing, or something alive bigger than anything known? Eventually, the NOAA decided it was ice fracturing, but that explanation never fully silenced the wonder. Because what if you drift deeper still? The temperature drops to near freezing, and you can feel the water pressing gently against your skin like the weight of centuries. And yet you're calm? Maybe it's the rhythm of it, the slow, patient heartbeat of this realm. No urgency, no deadlines, just existence. The creatures here don't rush because nothing ever really ends. You think of how these animals live in total darkness, yet still make light. That irony feels oddly human. Maybe that's what we do too, shine, not because we have to, but because we can't help it. Below you, hydrothermal vents hiss, faintly spewing clouds of mineral-rich water that look like underwater smoke. Strange white crabs and tube worms cluster around them, feeding on bacteria that thrive without sunlight. Life, it turns out, doesn't need warmth or air. It just needs possibility. The Pacific provides even that. You hover for a long time, surrounded by glimmering threads of light. It's like floating in a cathedral of stars, except the stars move, breathe, and occasionally blink at you. There's something humbling about it, realizing that the ocean, in its darkest corners, still celebrates beauty. A faint pulse ripples through the water, a whale far away calling through the deep. The sound vibrates in your chest, the longest song ever sung by any creature, echoing through a world without light. You feel it not as sound, but as emotion. The Pacific is speaking in its own language, and tonight it feels like a lullaby. You close your eyes for a moment and let the song wrap around you. The darkness isn't frightening anymore. It's gentle. It's home. You rise slowly, leaving behind the flickering glow of the midnight zone, until faint blue light starts to return. The water warms slightly, and a new rhythm begins to take shape. Not the pulse of volcanoes or currents this time, but the beat of oars, sails, and hearts. Because before satellites, compasses, and engines, there were people who knew this ocean better than anyone. The Polynesians and the navigators who read the Pacific like a living map. You can almost see them now. Sleek, double-hulled canoes cutting through the surf under a canopy of stars. Their sails are made of woven palm leaves, their hulls carved from breadfruit trees. The paddlers move in silence, their eyes fixed not on charts, but on the heavens. They are traveling thousands of miles between islands, scattered across an ocean larger than all the continents, combined without GPS, without compasses, without fear. The Pacific was their highway long before it became anyone else's mystery. You float alongside one of their vessels in your imagination, watching, as the navigator stands barefoot on the deck, his head tilted toward the wind. He feels it on his face, listens to the rhythm of the waves against the hull, and studies the flight of seabirds. To him, the ocean isn't an obstacle, it's a conversation. This art of wayfinding was once considered lost magic, but it's pure science wrapped in intuition. The navigators memorized entire star lines patterns of celestial positions rising and setting along the horizon that correspond to specific directions. They could tell latitude by the color of the water longitude, by the timing of swells and proximity to land, by the smell of certain birds or the shimmer of drifting clouds. Even the reflection of starlight on waves carried meaning. Scientists still marvel at how accurate they were. Long before European explorers set sail, Polynesians had already mapped routes connecting Hawaii, Tahiti, Fiji, Samoa, and New Zealand. They crossed thousands of miles of open ocean using nothing but memory and the steady rhythm of the earth. Some researchers once doubted it was even possible, suggesting those migrations happened by accident. But then modern navigators trained in the ancient ways proved otherwise. They built replicas of those canoes and sailed them across the Pacific guided only by stars and instinct, and arrived exactly where their ancestors said they would. You smile imagining what it must have felt like to stand on such a vessel at night. The sky above would have been infinite, a velvet dome scattered with millions of points of light. The horizon would have vanished into darkness. And yet, to a navigator, everything had meaning. The world wasn't empty, it was full of direction. As you drift, you can almost hear the chants of training, the stories passed from teacher to apprentice. Polynesian navigation wasn't written down. It was sung like poetry. The stars had names, the winds had moods, the waves had families. Each one belonged to a story, and knowing those stories was the same as knowing the map. It's a kind of knowledge that feels less like learning and more like remembering. You glide farther, and the ocean widens again. You picture a fleet of canoes on a long voyage, hundreds of miles from any shore. The sea is calm tonight, the stars bright. The navigator knows it's nearly dawn because the star Altair has begun to fade. Soon the color of the horizon will shift to gray, then gold. He points, and the crew changes course ever so slightly. They trust him completely because here, trust is survival. When the sun rises, they see it, a faint line of land ahead just where it should be. Cheers break out, laughter echoing over the waves. Another island found, another story added to the ocean's memory. Scientists still debate how the first people reached places like Easter Island or Hawaii. Some models suggest they navigated by seasonal wind patterns. Others propose they waited for El Niño events to change the currents. But the oral histories tell a simpler truth: they listened. They watched. They learned the Pacific's moods, the way one learns a friend's. You think of how few people today could cross even a city without a map. And yet these voyagers could cross an entire ocean with the night sky as their compass. There's something deeply grounding about that proof that the world, even at its largest, can still be understood through patience and attention. The canoe beside you fades slowly into mist. Its crew turns to silhouettes, then to shadows. The sea returns to stillness, and for a moment that the stars seem to pulse in time with your heartbeat. You realize that what the Polynesians did wasn't just navigation, it was communion. They weren't conquering the ocean. They were joining it. You take one more look upward. The constellations glimmer faintly, their reflections stretching down through the water like ghostly oars. Somewhere, a soft voice in your mind whispers one of their old proverbs. The ocean is vast, but the horizon is near. You breathe slowly in and out, matching the rhythm of invisible waves. The Pacific hums beneath you, not with mystery this time, but with memory. And for once, you feel like you belong here too. The night is long gone now. The ocean has turned a deep sapphire under the rising sun, and the air feels alive with motion. You hover just above the surface, watching the water move, not randomly, but with purpose. Because here, in the heart of the Pacific, the sea itself has a circulation, a pulse, a memory that connects every corner of the planet. These are the currents, the whispering veins of Earth's bloodstream. From space, they look like living brush strokes, ribbons of blue, turquoise, and green, looping endlessly around the globe. The Pacific holds the largest of them all, the North Pacific Gyre, a massive clockwise current that spans thousands of miles. You've already met its dark side, the garbage patch, but there's more to it than that. This gyre, along with its southern twin, moves water heat and nutrients like arteries carrying oxygen through a body. Without them, the planet's climate would collapse. You can almost feel the motion beneath you, the subtle pull of water traveling westward near the equator, turning north and then looping back east along the coast of North America. It's slow no faster than walking speed, but unstoppable. A single molecule of water here might take decades to complete one circuit. You imagine drifting with it, seeing the world inch by inch, timeless and unbothered. beneath that steady surface, invisible highways of temperature and salinity crisscross the ocean. Warm tropical water meets cold polar flows, mixing just enough to keep life balanced. It's like watching color blend no lines, no borders, just constant, graceful change. This is where El Niño begins, where storms are born, where the Pacific breathes in and out. Scientists still debate the exact patterns of these currents. They shift with wind seasons and even the pull of the moon. Some years the gyres expand, others they tighten. And deep below, even stranger currents move in silence as slow rivers of dense cold water, flowing along the seafloor, linking all the world's oceans in what researchers call the global conveyor belt. It's as if the Earth designed its own circulatory system powered only by heat and gravity. You glide lower, watching plankton drift with the current like cosmic dust. Every one of these microscopic creatures plays a part absorbing carbon, releasing oxygen, shaping the very air we breathe. Half of the oxygen on Earth comes from tiny plankton floating right here in the Pacific. You take a deep breath, realizing that even this invisible ocean life is inside your lungs right now. It's humbling, like realizing you've been breathing starlight without knowing. Currents don't just move water, they move stories. They've carried seeds, ships, and even civilizations. Polynesian navigators once rode these same flows to discover new islands. During World War II, drifting debris from sunken ships followed them across thousands of miles. In recent years, a message in a bottle tossed from Japan washed ashore in Washington State, a journey that took 10 years and a little help from the gyre. The Pacific remembers everything that touches it. You notice something odd as you drift closer to the equator. The water feels warmer again, pulsing gently under your fingertips. This is the equatorial countercurrent, a ribbon of eastward moving water that defies the trade winds. It's like a secret river flowing the wrong way, slicing through the chaos with quiet defiance. Scientists still puzzle over how it maintains such perfect balance, warm enough to rise, dense enough to cut through colder layers. It's the ocean's version of rebellion. A soft shimmer passes under you, tiny silver fish, riding the flow, their scales flashing like sunlight, trapped in water. Currents are highways for them too, invisible paths that lead to feeding grounds or safety. Even the largest creatures follow these routes. Blue whales migrate thousands of miles, guided by invisible thermal maps written in the water's motion. They know what humans are only beginning to measure. The Pacific isn't random. It's organized in ways too vast for simple charts. You drift westward, feeling the rhythm quicken slightly as trade winds push the surface water. It's gentle but constant, like a long exhale. The entire Pacific acts as an engine, transferring heat from the tropics to the poles, stabilizing weather across continents. Without it, winters would be harsher, summers more brutal, and the skies far less forgiving. The ocean doesn't just sit there, it works endlessly, silently, keeping everything alive. Scientists still argue whether climate change will slow or accelerate these systems. Some models suggest the gyres are tightening. Others predict their collapse. It's unsettling, the thought of something so massive being fragile. But when you think about it, everything fragile is precious. As the current carries you onward, you spot a long, pale ribbon trailing just beneath the surface. It's not plastic or seaweed. It's a line of foam marking the boundary between two converging flows. The water on one side is slightly warmer, the other cooler. You trail your hand through it, feeling the difference like two overlapping heartbeats. You can't see the Pacific's boundaries, but you can feel them everywhere. You let yourself drift, eyes half closed, lulled by the endless motion. The water murmurs softly against your thoughts. Somewhere far below, continents are moving an inch at a time. Above, clouds swirl in slow spirals born from this same current. Everything moves because the Pacific moves. You take another breath and realize that this is the sound of balance, yet the ocean's quiet promise to keep the world turning even when no one's watching. You keep drifting, half asleep now, when a vibration hums through the water, like a deep note from a giant cello. It isn't a whale this time, it's something stranger. The Pacific has always been full of sound, but some of its noises simply don't fit the usual catalog of life or geology. The ocean has its own language, and some of its words have never been translated. Back in 1997, scientists from NOAA picked up a sound that changed everything. They called it the bloop. It was low, loud, and unlike anything they'd ever recorded. So powerful it was detected by underwater microphones over 3,000 miles apart. For a while, no one knew what it was. Some said it was ice fracturing in Antarctica. Others whispered about something alive, something massive moving through the deep. Even after years of analysis, that single stretched-out bloop still echoes in the imagination of anyone who's heard the recording. You pause for a moment, listening to the faint, ringing silence around you. Then another sound joins it, a slow rising tone that wavers like a sigh. That one's called Julia, recorded in 1999. It lasted 15 minutes, too rhythmic to be random, too organic to be purely mechanical. And then there's Upsweep, an eerie sequence of sweeping notes that returns every spring and autumn from somewhere near the Pacific's volcanic ridges. Each sound has its own personality, its own ghost. Scientists still argue about what causes them. Ice quakes, gas venting from seafloor volcanoes, giant collapsing caverns under pressure, all are possible. And yet the fact that these signals reappear year after year gives them an almost heartbeat-like quality. You can't help but wonder if the Earth itself is humming. And the Pacific is just the amplifier. You sink deeper into darker water, where the pressure makes every movement deliberate. The soundscape grows richer the farther you go. There's the crackle of tiny shrimp, the rhythmic clicking of dolphins hunting somewhere distant, the subsonic pulse of an undersea quake traveling for hundreds of miles. Even the seafloor isn't quiet. Hydrothermal vents rumble, shifting gases, hiss, and sediments slide in slow motion. It's an orchestra with no conductor, chaotic, but strangely harmonious. If you listen long enough, you begin to hear patterns. The low calls of blue whales overlap with the creaking of tectonic plates. A pod of humpbacks begins a song that spirals upward in pitch, almost like the wordless equivalent of laughter. Some marine biologists think these songs function as long-distance beacons guiding whales through murky depths. Others believe they're social performances, the ocean's version of poetry. Either way, you realize that the Pacific isn't silent, it's alive with vibration. You remember that sound moves 4 times faster in water than in air. Every note travels farther, deeper, cleaner. It means that somewhere right now, a whale's song could be passing through you, even if you can't hear it. You're literally bathed in sound all the time. Your ears just aren't tuned to its frequency. It's humbling in a way to realize that the planet is constantly singing beneath our awareness. And then there are the sounds we make. Sonar from ships and submarines, the hammering of oil drills, the mechanical hum of propellers. To a whale, each one is a thunderclap, echoing for miles. Some researchers fear the ocean's natural music is being drowned out. Others have recorded whales changing their frequencies to adapt as if shifting keys in an underwater symphony just to be heard again. You imagine that struggle, and the largest creatures on Earth whispering louder, trying to sing above the noise. You glide past an underwater microphone station, one of many scattered across the Pacific. Its steel frame is covered in algae and barnacles cables trailing like vines. Inside its silent casing, it's been recording for decades. Storms, earthquakes, and those mysterious calls that don't fit any known pattern. Scientists joke that if the ocean ever wanted to say hello, this is where it would do it. You tilt your head and for a moment you think you do hear something. A distant rhythm, deep and deliberate, like breathing. Maybe it's the sound of waves colliding in the trench. Maybe it's your own pulse reflected back through the water. Or maybe, as some like to believe, it's the voice of the Pacific itself, slow, ancient, endlessly patient. A faint memory surfaces. Sailors once swore they heard bells at sea when no ships were near. Some called it the singing ocean. Scientists later discovered that certain temperature layers in the Pacific can trap an echo sound for hundreds of miles, creating ghostly ringing tones that seem to follow ships through the fog. Even today, no one can fully predict where or when the phenomenon will occur. The ocean occasionally likes to play tricks. You realize how strange it is that silence and sound coexist so easily here. Up above, waves crash, gulls cry, storms roar. Down here, every noise is softened, stretched, slowed. You can almost feel your thoughts sinking with it. Each tone blends into the next until there's no clear beginning or end, just one continuous hum that fills everything. It's oddly soothing, like being wrapped in the planet's own lullaby. You start to drift again, your heartbeat matching the rhythm of those invisible vibrations. Maybe the Pacific has been singing this same song since before there were ears to hear it. Maybe that's why it feels so familiar. You smile faintly, letting the last echo fade. Somewhere far away, the Bloop or Julia might still be murmuring, lost in the dark. The Pacific doesn't explain itself. It just keeps humming softly, endlessly, as if reminding you that mystery doesn't need to be solved. It just needs to be listened to. You descend once more, following that faint hum through layers of deep blue until the light disappears again. But this time, the darkness feels different. Warmer somehow, alive with quiet movement. You've entered the realm of hydrothermal vents, the deep-sea volcano gardens, where the Pacific's hidden fire meets its coldest water. The seafloor here isn't barren. It's alive with color and motion. Towers of black stone rise like chimneys, spewing dark plumes of mineral-rich water. The jets are so hot they could melt lead, yet within a few feet, the surrounding water is near freezing. It's a place where opposites coexist, fire and ice, death and creation side by side. You hover between them, feeling the contrast ripple through the water. When the first submersible Alvin discovered these vents in 1977 near the Galapagos Rift, no one believed life could exist here. There was no sunlight, no photosynthesis, just toxic chemicals and pressure that would crush a submarine hull. And yet, what the scientists found changed everything. Thriving ecosystems of creatures that didn't rely on sunlight at all. Instead, they fed on chemistry. Bacteria used sulfur and hydrogen to create energy, a process called chemosynthesis. In a single dive, humanity had to rewrite its definition of life. You drift closer to one of the vents. It's called a black smoker, and it looks exactly like its name, a pillar exhaling thick clouds of black water that shimmer with heat. The plumes billow upward, swirling with iron and sulfur, staining the water like smoke in air. Around its base, white crabs scuttle across the rocks, and pale shrimp crawl through the haze. They seem unbothered by the conditions. This is home to them. You notice something larger, long, pale tubes rising like ghostly flowers from the rocks. They're tube worms, some over 6 feet long with bright red plumes at their tips. They have no mouths, no stomachs. Instead, they rely entirely on the bacteria living inside them. The bacteria feed on the chemicals from the vents, and in return, they feed the worms. It's a perfect partnership and alliance built on trust and necessity. Even in one of the harshest places on Earth, life finds a way to cooperate. You drift slowly between the chimneys. The temperature difference is astonishing. On one side, water scalds at 700 degrees Fahrenheit. A few feet away, it's cold enough to freeze your skin. Fish with sightless eyes weave between the jets, their translucent bodies glowing faintly. A small octopus the color of milk sits curled around a rock like a pearl. Every movement here feels deliberate, as if these creatures are part of the ocean's private ceremony. Scientists still debate how long these vent systems last. Some may flourish for centuries. Others vanish within years when the volcanic activity shifts. It's an ecosystem built on impermanence, and yet every time one dies, another is born somewhere else. The Pacific keeps its balance. It's as though the planet itself gardens these vents, planting and replanting life in the dark. And then there's the most extraordinary thought of all: the possibility that this is where life itself began. Many researchers now believe that billions of years ago, early Earth looked a lot like this volcanic, unstable, rich with chemical energy. In these vent environments, the first self-replicating molecules might have formed tiny bubbles of chemistry that would eventually evolve into everything you see today. Every plant, every animal, every human breath may trace its lineage back to this darkness, this heat, this chemistry. You can't help but feel small in the best possible way. A bubble of hot water escapes from the vent beside you, rising like a silver marble until it bursts into cooler water above. You follow it upward, watching the plume twist and disperse into the dark. It's beautiful proof that even destruction can be graceful here. You hover for a long time, listening to the faint crackle of the vent fields. The sound is like distant rainfall, or maybe applause from the planet itself. There's movement everywhere: crabs scuttling shrimp, flashing bacteria shimmering like dust in sunlight that never arrives. You realize that if this were another world, say, a moon of Jupiter or Saturn, scientists would call this a miracle. But here it's just another Tuesday in the Pacific. You think about how much of the ocean we've never seen. For every vent discovered, there might be hundreds still hidden. Whole mountain chains could be glowing right now, unseen, keeping the Earth alive from within. You imagine alien oceans under the ice of Europa doing the same thing, fed by geothermal heat. Maybe the Pacific isn't unique. It's just the part of the universe we happen to live above. A slow current passes by, carrying flakes of mineral dust that glint like falling snow. The chimneys fade into shadow behind you, but the warmth lingers. The Pacific's deep heart continues to thrum, creating life from fire in perfect silence. As you drift upward toward the cooler, softer water, the darkness begins to fade again. The weight lessens. The hum of the vents grows distant. But you know it's still there, thousands of feet below, working quietly, endlessly like a secret heartbeat the planet never stops listening to. You exhale slowly, eyes half closed. The ocean feels infinite again, peaceful, yet impossibly alive. And you realize that what you've been feeling all along isn't fear, it's gratitude. Gratitude for a world that hides miracles in its darkest corners. You drift upward once more, passing through layers of blue that grow steadily lighter until the first fingers of sunlight pierce the water. The temperature rises. The pressure eases. The ocean around you becomes clearer, softer, like a slow awakening from a long dream. You break through the surface into a world of gentle motion and infinite horizon. The sky stretches in every direction, so wide that even thought feels smaller under it. You're still in the middle of the Pacific, but here at the surface, everything feels slower, calmer, as if the ocean itself exhales after holding the weight of all those mysteries below. Waves roll lazily, a deep sapphire fading to turquoise near the edges of unseen shores. You float on your back for a moment, the sunlight warm against your face, the air heavy with salt and serenity. This is the Pacific's quiet side and the ocean's dreaming silence. You can feel its rhythm beneath you, the same rhythm that drives tides, births, storms, and balances climates. Every rise and fall of water carries the weight of all you've seen tonight, the fire of volcanoes, the cold of trenches, the hum of creatures glowing in the dark. You realize the Pacific doesn't separate its faces. It simply changes its tone. Calm and chaos, birth and decay. They all belong to the same song. Above you, clouds drift lazily like great white sails. Somewhere far away, a distant thunderstorm rumbles, its echoes softened by distance. The horizon shimmers with heat, and in that haze, it almost looks curved, as if you could see the shape of the earth itself. The Pacific is so wide that it actually warps your sense of geometry. You're not just on the ocean, you're on the planet's curve, riding a living, breathing sphere of water and wind. Beneath the surface, fish flicker like thoughts, silver quick gone before you can blink. A sea turtle glides past unhurried, carrying a small forest of barnacles on its shell. The water is full of sound again, the soft percussion of waves, the hiss of foam, the sigh of wind. Compared to the thunderous power of the trenches or the quiet hum of hydrothermal vents, this simplicity feels almost holy. You think about everything this ocean holds, the wrecks of lost explorers, the migrations of whales, the tiny plankton drifting unseen, each one making the oxygen you're breathing now. Every piece of it connects to everything else, a single web stretched across the planet. The Pacific isn't just a place, it's the pulse of Earth's memory. You float listening. The sound of your breath mingles with a hiss of water, the call of a far-off seabird, the faint hum of the world turning. The air smells faintly of salt and sunlight, clean, ancient, alive. You realize that this is what peace feels like, not the absence of noise, but the presence of harmony. Scientists still debate how deep the Pacific truly is, how many mountains it hides, how much life thrives unseen in its folds. They might keep debating forever. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved, they're meant to be felt. The ocean teaches that better than any equation. You glance at the horizon again and smile. Somewhere out there, new islands are rising from volcanoes. Somewhere else, old ones are sinking quietly back beneath the waves. The Pacific doesn't cling to permanence. It moves forward, endlessly creating, endlessly erasing. And maybe that's the lesson it offers you tonight. That it's okay to let things change, to drift, to dissolve, to begin again. You roll onto your stomach, feeling the cool water cradle your weight. The light shifts beneath you, scattering in gold and blue ripples that dance like reflections of dreams. The wind brushes against your hair, warm and soft. And for a fleeting moment, you could almost believe that the planet itself is breathing with you. Inhale, exhale, wave tide. Far below, the deep still thrums. The vents, the trenches, the ghost mountains, the unseen continents, all of it alive in quiet motion. The Pacific never stops dreaming, and now you're part of that dream too. You close your eyes. The waves rise, fall, and rise again, each one gentler than the last. The sound becomes rhythm, the rhythm becomes silence, and the silence becomes sleep. The next morning in your drifting dream, the sunlight feels different, warmer, sharper, as if it carries the memory of continents. You find yourself following that brightness eastward across the endless Pacific, where the ocean meets the sky in a thin silver line. The air smells faintly of rain, the kind that hasn't yet fallen. It's quiet except for a low rumble far away, the voice of another storm forming. The Pacific doesn't rest. Even its peace hums with preparation. Below you, the currents stir, and with them rises one of the planet's greatest wonders, the Pacific Weather Engine. You can almost see it not as clouds and fronts, but as a living system breathing through vapor and warmth. This is where typhoons are born, where winds that will later brush California first whisper themselves into existence. Every raindrop that falls on distant farmland may have once spun into being here, carried by the invisible architecture of air. The sun's heat paints invisible patterns across the sea, lifting water molecules into the sky. Those molecules gather, collide, and spiral into clouds. Somewhere, the first rotation begins. Barely a twist at first, then a slow swirl that tightens as it feeds on warm air. Typhoons and hurricanes aren't acts of chaos. They're energy looking for balance. The Pacific holds more of them than any other ocean, forming as many as 24 every year. And yet, every one of them is part of a deeper rhythm, a cycle that regulates temperature, salinity, and wind across the globe. You drift above one forming now. From this height, it looks like an artist's brushstroke, thin tendrils of cloud, curling over hundreds of miles, wrapping around a clear, dark eye. Inside that eye, the air is eerily calm, even as the edges roar with wind strong enough to lift ships. You imagine being inside that stillness, the world spinning in fury around you, but your center utterly quiet. Maybe that's why the Pacific always feels meditative. It teaches calm at the heart of movement. Scientists still debate the long-term behavior of these storms. Some say they're becoming stronger as the ocean warms, their winds more violent, their rain more relentless. Others argue that the Pacific will regulate itself as it has for millions of years, cycling through eras of storm and calm. But one thing is certain: every typhoon, no matter how fierce, is eventually broken by its own exhaustion. Nature spends what it has, then rests. Even the sky burns itself out before clearing again. As you hover above the spinning cloud deck, you notice how the sunlight bends through the mist, scattering colors in soft halos. Each droplet acts like a prism, painting rainbows that no one sees because they're too far from land. The Pacific is full of such secret beauty spectacles that exist only for themselves. Maybe that's what makes it so mysterious. It doesn't perform for an audience. You descend slightly into the storm's edge, where the water churns white and alive. The waves tower like moving walls, but between them, brief, calm pockets appear where flying fish dart upward to escape predators below. Lightning flashes in the distance, illuminating the surface for a heartbeat, a temporary daylight revealing a battlefield of motion. And then it's dark again, peaceful again, the thunder fading to a low murmur. You think about the life that depends on these storms. For coral reefs, the heavy rains bring nutrients washed from volcanic islands. For plankton, the churned-up water means food. Even the violent wind has a purpose. It mixes the surface layers of the ocean, redistributing heat that would otherwise stagnate. Chaos here is just balance in disguise. Somewhere far to the west, near the coast of Asia, a monsoon begins to stir. The Pacific breathes out moisture that will soon fall as torrential rain on rice fields filling rivers, feeding forests. Millions of lives will depend on this ocean's generosity. You can almost hear it, the hum of a living planet working quietly beneath human awareness. The clouds above you thin and shafts of sunlight break through. The storm begins to unwind, its perfect spiral dissolving into scattered streaks of mist. It's a reminder that nothing lasts, not even the grandest displays of power. The Pacific teaches that truth over and over permanence is a myth. Motion is the only constant. You rise higher until the storm becomes a white fingerprint below, drifting across a blue canvas. The air is still up here, the horizon stretching endlessly. For a moment, it feels like time has stopped. But you know it hasn't. The Pacific never pauses. It only changes tempo. You close your eyes and listen to the wind's slow exhale. Somewhere below, waves are forming that will one day touch distant shores. A drop of rain from this storm might end up in a Californian vineyard, a Japanese garden, or frozen on an Antarctic glacier. The Pacific connects them all, a single endless loop of transformation. And maybe that's its greatest secret. The ocean doesn't separate the world, it binds it. Every drop, every breath, every gust of wind begins here and ends here again. The waves soften beneath you, the last remnants of the storm fading into rhythm. The sun breaks fully now, spreading gold across the water, turning it into a mirror that reflects everything and hides nothing. You take a long, slow breath. The air smells like ozone salt and life itself. You feel both infinitesimal and infinite, as if the Pacific has quietly invited you to join its cycle, momentarily human, eternally part of water. The sun has slipped westward again, and dusk paints the sky in strokes of rose and violet. You find yourself gliding toward the edge of night, where the Pacific begins to shimmer with another kind of light and the glow of life that only appears when darkness falls. It starts faintly like starlight under the surface. Then it grows. Miles of water begin to sparkle with bioluminescence, tiny flashes from plankton, disturbed by waves swirling like galaxies in motion. Every ripple becomes a trail of blue fire. You dip your fingers into the sea and light blooms from your touch. It's impossible not to smile. The ocean is literally shining back at you. Bioluminescence is one of the Pacific's most enchanting tricks. Nearly 90% of deep-sea organisms produce light not through reflection, but through chemistry, tiny reactions inside their bodies that release photons. Some use it to communicate others, to hunt or confuse predators. The result? is a living aurora that turns the night ocean into a canvas of flickering constellations. You drift above a glowing wave that curls and breaks in slow motion, its crest flashing electric blue before melting into darkness. Every fish, every swirl of plankton leaves a luminous trail behind. You realize you're watching energy move, the transfer of motion, light, and life all at once. It's hypnotic. Far below, even stranger lights pulse in slow, deliberate rhythms, deep-sea creatures conversing across the black. Some flash in patterns scientists have yet to decode. Others dim and brighten like signals from alien civilizations. In a way, maybe they are. The ocean floor here is as unexplored as outer space, and yet it shines just as beautifully. A faint current brushes past, carrying the scent of seaweed and cool salt. You follow it, and soon you notice another glow on the horizon, a vertical column of light rising from the water. For a moment, it looks like the reflection of a lighthouse, but there's no land for thousands of miles. Then you realize it's not a reflection at all. It's the phenomenon sailors call the Milky Sea. A Milky Sea can cover hundreds of square miles, glowing softly for hours or even days. Ships that pass through describe it as sailing over liquid moonlight, the water glowing from within rather than reflecting above. For centuries, no one knew what caused it. Some thought it was magic, others thought it was plankton caught in lightning storms. Only recently did scientists confirm the truth. Vast blooms of bioluminescent bacteria communicating en masse, synchronized like an orchestra of light. Even microbes, it turns out, have chorus lines. You glide lower over one now, and the glow deepens. The light isn't harsh, it's gentle, milky, almost maternal. It feels like the ocean is cradling itself in its own luminance. You imagine what it would look like from space, a glowing signature carved into the planet's skin, visible even through clouds. A reminder that the Pacific doesn't sleep when the world turns dark. It simply changes how it dreams. You think about how strange it is that this light born from chemical reactions in organisms too small to see can illuminate miles of sea. It's the same paradox you find everywhere in the Pacific immensity built from the smallest motions. A school of tiny fish darts through the light. And for a moment, it looks as if they're leaving glowing trails behind them, like comets. You realize that every one of these lights is temporary, fading almost as quickly as it appears. The ocean doesn't cling to its brilliance. It simply lets it pass. Maybe that's what makes it beautiful. Scientists still argue about the deeper purpose of this glow. Some say it's defensive, a way to attract predators that will eat the hunters chasing them. Others think it's social, a means of communication in a world without sunlight. There are even theories that entire ecosystems coordinate through light signals, passing information the way neurons fire across a brain. If that's true, then the Pacific is alive in more ways than anyone imagined, a vast consciousness flickering quietly beneath the surface. You look upward. The stars are out now, mirrored in the glowing water below. It's impossible to tell which is the sky and which is the sea. You realize you're suspended between two infinities, each reflecting the other's mystery. A soft wind brushes your face, and the waves rise and fall like breathing. You feel small, yes, but also deeply connected to the plankton, the stars, the water, the unseen pulse beneath it all. For a moment, you wonder if perhaps this glow is the planet's heartbeat, made visible, a reminder that even in darkness, the world shines quietly to itself. The light begins to fade as the current shifts. One by one, the flickers die out, leaving only the moon reflected on the surface. The silence that follows is total but not empty. It's full of the memory of light. You float there for a while, watching the horizon fade into the kind of darkness that isn't frightening but peaceful, the kind that invites rest. Somewhere in that vast quiet, you feel the Pacific's pulse slow too, as if it's preparing to dream again. You breathe in, exhale slowly, and whisper to no one in particular, "Thank you." The sea doesn't answer, but the next small wave that passes by glows briefly where your voice touched it, just enough to let you know it heard. The light fades softly now, melting into the horizon. Your breathing slows, sinking with the lazy push and pull of the tide. Every sound stretches into a lull, every ripple a whisper. The ocean beneath you isn't a thing to understand anymore. It's a feeling vast and steady, carrying you where you need to go. You imagine the water supporting you completely, its surface cool but forgiving. The horizon has blurred into mist, and the clouds drift like slow thoughts overhead. Somewhere out there, whales still sing stars, still reflect, and the Pacific still hums its low eternal note, the same one it's been humming for billions of years. The world feels smaller now, but in the best way. Every mystery you've seen, the glowing creatures, the sunken continents, the vanished explorers, the molten gardens folds into a single truth. Everything is connected and everything endures. Even when unseen, even when forgotten, the ocean remembers for you. Let your breath move like the waves in, out, in, out. Feel your pulse match the rhythm of the earth. The Pacific's silence isn't emptiness, it's fullness. A space wide enough to hold everything you've been and everything you'll be. Soon the night will settle over you like a soft blanket. The water will turn to glass, the air will grow still, and even your thoughts will drift away, gentle as plankton. You are floating in the oldest lullaby on the planet, the heartbeat of water, the whisper of time. Sleep now. The ocean will keep watch.